Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We're happy to be here to talk about the state of the city of San Luis Obispo for 2023. My name is Greg Herman. I'm the Deputy City Manager. I'm joined tonight by our Mayor, Erica A. Stewart, and our City Manager, Derek Johnson, who will be giving the presentation this evening. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Restrooms are out this door on the left-hand side. Also, we've got a lot of information to cover, but we are gonna have some time at the end for questions. And so please just keep those in mind, and we'll have probably about 15 to 20 minutes at the end to answer any questions that you might have. With that, I'll get us started on our theme for the evening, which is purpose, people, and progress. And so this is actually a theme that we use throughout the city for a lot of different events and programs. We think it's certainly applicable this year and certainly applicable to the state of the city of San Luis Obispo. Purpose is all about the why behind the work that we collectively do to benefit the community, and you'll have a chance to hear some more about the plans and policies that inform that why. People is that we are an organization that delivers services through people, and we're really happy to be able to highlight some of those folks and the work that they do. And then in terms of purpose is really the reason that we're all here, and that is our opportunity to be able to make people's lives better in the city of San Luis Obispo. For much more on all of that, I'm very happy to introduce our Mayor, Erica Stewart.
Thank you, Greg. Well, I'm happy to kick off this presentation as long as I can get my paperwork up here. So sorry about that. I'm excited to talk about, what motivates us to serve the community and why in the world the city government exists. But as Greg shared, we really have quite a big vision, and we're constantly looking at how do we do the work behind the vision, and how do we help this community continue working with the core values that we have. So we have the major city goals. We have the major city goals. And in our world here at the city, the major city goals is really taking that vision and saying, how are we going to put it into place? And what are we going to focus on? Because really there's a lot, there's a lot that we do, but there's a lot that there is to be done. So really looking at how do we decide that is really through the community. We ask the community, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? What's the most important to you? We compile it all together, and then we as a city council come together and say, all right, city staff, here we go. What do the work plans look like? So historically, these plans have really looked at like the high level, and so we're not looking at each and every single action. We look at these major city goals. Our main city goals, we kind of tie a lot of things together at once. So climate action, open space and sustainable transportation, diversity, equity, inclusion, economic recovery, resiliency, and fiscal sustainability, housing, and homelessness. Putting all of those together, that's a lot. But that's what we're looking at in our community. That's what matters the most to everyone in our community. And that's how we're going to go ahead and have Derek share about the budget, the financials, and how we get there.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And first off, thanks everyone for coming tonight. We're really glad to have you all here. I mean, I know we have some people watching remotely. I think last year after we finished up the State of the City, we had a few hundred people that tuned into our YouTube channel. And so you may not see a lot of faces here in person, but believe me, this is a topic of interest by the community. And so the good news, and just want to emphasize and want to thank the mayor, is that the city is in solid footing. We have a balanced budget, and we have reserves, and ultimately we were able to use those reserves in the last year to deal with some emergencies, which I'll talk about in just a moment. As the mayor mentioned, the city council has established major city goals in our financial plan. They really guide the strategic initiatives of our city organization. And so every couple years, we receive recognition from the Government Finance Officers Association for the tremendous work that we do as part of our budgetary process. And I'm also happy to say that we're often rated by bonding agencies, and those bonding agencies continue to reinforce the high fiscal capacity of the city organization. In terms of a quick glance of our 22-23 budget, broken down by different types, the general fund is by far the largest fund. It pays for services that we all know well: police, fire services, street maintenance, and park and recreation program. They are supplemented by enterprise funds. They're essentially business funds. And they are paid for by rates for charges for service. They include sewer, water, transit, and parking services. Capital improvement program is a big component of what the city does. It's part of the city's budget. We help maintain or improve a city asset, or often called infrastructure maintenance. And in the last year, we've completed a number of considerable projects, including the Tank Farm Roundabout, our Taft to Pepper Railroad Trail, our groundwater contamination characterization study, where we just this week, we pushed the button for the soft opening of the city's $140 million investment for our wastewater resource recovery facility. We'll have a full ribbon cutting here in the future after we get through the testing phase. We made some improvements for pedestrian and cycling safety for Broad and Woodbridge, as an example, as a pedestrian beacon. And then all of you saw was the first time that we repaved our streets in the downtown. This is all happening largely because our budget is supported by the community, who supported the local revenue measure back in 2020 with a 1.5% local sales tax. And the local revenue measure is the city's largest revenue source. It is also the most volatile in terms of being sensitive to economic conditions and recessionary impacts, and I'll dig into this a little more. Typically, when people think of city services, they think of our core services, which have developed over time based upon community needs. It's what many of you know as you are in and around the city. These are typically funded through the general fund and also the enterprise funds. The majority of the general fund, about 45%, goes to community safety programs in the police and fire departments, and we'll talk about those more in detail. The remainder of the general fund is used for infrastructure improvements, open space management, aquatics programs, childcare, transit services, street maintenance, financial oversight, code enforcement, and water distribution and treatment, as just an example. As we move to the next slide, I talked about that 1.5% sales tax measure is what we call as our local revenue measure. And here is a breakdown of how we've spent the sales tax revenue from 21-22. And so you can see the latest data we have will be prepared in a report on local revenue measure funding for 22-23 in the fall of this next year as we close out the fiscal year. But you can also see that about 70% of the city's funding is spent on what the community asked for, which is street maintenance and transportation, significant improvements to biking and walking to make slow safer, community safety, youth and senior services and recreation programs, and open space preservation. And so with that, I'm going to take a pause here for just a moment, and we're going to show a brief video highlighting some of the city's accomplishments over the last year.
The City of San Luis Obispo continued to enhance our urban forest by maintaining more than 13,000 trees in our shared public spaces, including the city's 582 acres of parks. Not only does our urban forest provide health benefits and beauty, but we are planting 10,000 new trees by 2035 to help our community achieve net neutral carbon emissions by the year 2035. To help reach our climate action goals, the city also focused on clean and green energy and transportation. We're working to bring even more electric vehicle charging stations to San Luis Obispo for those who choose this sustainable transportation option. We also supported our community's commitment to sustainability and maintained 65.5 miles of open space trails within the 4,500 acres of open space owned by the City of San Luis Obispo. We introduced the community to Miosi Open Space and completed the Rigetti Hill Open Space Conservation Plan. We supported local businesses in more ways than one, bringing in nearly $1 million this winter in direct local spending through our Buy Local Bonus and Eat Local Bonus programs. We dedicated funding toward unique and diverse public art pieces that create and foster a sense of community and belonging. To support San Luis Obispo's economy and growing community, we facilitated more housing with an emphasis on affordable housing. In 2022 to 2023, 147 affordable housing units were secured through entitlements or construction. But we're not just focused on housing. We're focused on building communities. Progress on several of San Luis Obispo's major expansion areas include walkable and bikeable neighborhoods with parks, commercial properties, and amenities to focus on community building and connections. To further connect communities, our parks and recreation teams provided inclusive, accessible programming that serves everyone. We worked with the public to prioritize new and revitalized recreational services and amenities in several neighborhoods across the city. The team also filled 2,000 childcare spots through various parks and recreation programs. We worked proactively with community members to keep San Luis Obispo safe. We enhanced traffic safety by providing a system of safe, reliable, and well-maintained roadways, sidewalks, traffic signals, and streetlights. We maintain more than 72 miles of the city's bicycle network. We created our first ever mobile crisis unit, pairing a fire department EMT with a behavioral health case worker to provide crisis support services to individuals suffering from non-emergency mental health challenges, drug and alcohol addiction, and chronic homelessness. We continue to leverage additional funding from partner agencies to expand our community action team with the SLO Police Department to support the needs of the most vulnerable members of our community. We work together with our police department to reduce crime, provide safe roadways for pedestrians, vehicles, and bicyclists, and added more community service officer positions to provide more proactive law enforcement services, particularly in downtown San Luis Obispo, and to allow sworn police officers to remain available to respond to higher priority emergency calls for service. And the San Luis Obispo Fire Department responded rapidly to emergency calls for service to a wide variety of emergencies, including medical emergencies, structure fires, vegetation fires, and more. We look forward to continuing to provide exceptional service to the people of San Luis Obispo.
Thank you, Whitney, for queuing that up. And so part of the city organization is built up of people in this organization, and I'm really proud of the people who serve San Luis Obispo. They really have a servant's heart. They approach this work with a deep care and respect for this community, and they really cherish the idea of serving one of the oldest cities in San Luis Obispo. We would not come close to reaching our major city goals without all of the people that work at the city and our community partners. And so we have a lot of those that are here tonight. And specifically, I want to just mention, we have Councilmember Shoresman who's here. We have our public safety chiefs who have joined us tonight, in addition to representatives from Cal Poly and SLOMA. I just want to recognize those people and thank them for joining us tonight. One of the great things about San Luis Obispo that I have the pleasure of sharing with you today is that we know, because we've done some longitudinal work in terms of employee engagement, that we have some of the highest engagement of city employees in the state of California. And that's because there is alignment between the community, the council, and leadership of ultimately where we want to take this organization. And that alignment can be very, very powerful. In fact, we had an 88% participation rate in our engagement survey that we did, and we were one of the only few organizations where our levels of engagement really went up in the last few years. And so as an organization where our mission is people serving people, you can imagine how important it is to have people in the organization who understand our vision, our mission, and connect that to the work. People have cited the reasons for wanting to work here as our organizational culture is a strength. They see their impact in serving the San Luis Obispo. They have respect and they can collaborate and recognize that stakeholders have a keen interest in San Luis Obispo, and they all indicate positive views of their supervisors. And so I am really excited about those results, and I think that they will prove to be very beneficial into the future. Speaking of our partnerships, I want to talk about our economy and tourism team. They play a huge role in the city's success over the last couple years. Did you know that tourists help fund important public services for our community to enjoy? In fact, just before coming here, I came to a meeting with the mayor in which we received an updated study that our residents on average benefit from about $1,700 of funded services by people who pay taxes who don't live here. The good part of what we also learned today is that most of our community sees tourism as a positive aspect of our community. And there were some other exciting results I want to share in the future. But talking about tourism right now, we collected a record-breaking $10.6 million last year. It was a 54% increase in tourism revenue from July of 2021 to June of 2022. And again, they fund these revenues fund police, fire, road maintenance, hiking trail maintenance, and economic development. This all couldn't happen with our tourism business and improvement district that provides revenues that benefit the operators of hotels, and they do a tremendous amount of marketing. And those include 43 lodging properties, 128 homestays, and they're supported by a talented group of 7 advisory board members. So they deserve a tremendous amount of consideration and gratitude for all the work that they've done. We have other partnerships that we've also developed over time. One is based upon our partnership with the SLO Chamber of Commerce. And so beyond tourism, we want to support the local community members in the business. And 2 exciting programs that have been replicated throughout the state and both nationally. One is our Buy Local program. And this winter, we partnered again with the SLO Chamber. It rewards shoppers who spend money at local retailers during the winter holiday season. Excuse me. Additionally, for our first time, we adapted the program for our Eat Local program, and in January 2023, it was the very first time that we did this. Both of those programs sold out ahead of schedule, resulting in nearly $1 million of extra spending based upon $125,000 in overall investment by the city. Hopefully many of you caught today one of our next program that's designed for locals is Park Local Bonus Program. It just rolled out today. I talked to some of you who came in to today's session and know that many of you have already enrolled. I know that many of you are concerned with rising parking rates. And what it does is it supports locals by allowing them to keep the first free hour of parking in our downtown structures. So you have to register online. If you go to the city's website or go to our social media pages, you can learn more about it. And this could not have been done without the City Council and the creative team and our community partners in downtown SLO that really helped us come up with this very innovative program. Other needs in San Luis Obispo and our region that we're tackling is expanding childcare options for San Luis Obispo. So we partnered with CapSLO to direct funding for family childcare startups, and we invested $54,000 in a new program. What that has resulted in is 8 childcare startups since January of 2022. 4 more are currently being processed, and that's equated to over 100 new childcare childcare slots for our community. And if you have children or if you know people who have children, they can all tell you about the challenges of ultimately finding childcare. At the outset of tonight, I talked about our team and the level of engagement, and our Storm Patrol team took care of our community when we needed them during the months of January, February, and March. We had a significant series of storms that came through our region. We saw record levels of flooding, property damage to shared public spaces, but it could have been much worse. Our Storm Patrol team worked here around the clock. We had 0 fatalities as a result of the dangerous storm conditions, and the hardworking team members worked day and night to mitigate the issues. Unfortunately, our city did incur millions of dollars worth of damage, and so we're fortunate that there were both federal and state declarations of emergencies, and so we anticipate being eligible for approximately 93.5% of the overall cost for our response and for the long-term repairs. Thankfully, we had emergency reserves that we were able to pull from, and that ultimately helped us. Despite the torrential downpours and flooding, our team did step up, and I just want to highlight some of the things that we've done. We had some vehicle rescues, some home rescues. We had a fair amount of road closures. We provided free sand and sandbags for our community, removed and addressed fallen trees. Debris removal, many of you have probably seen both the before and after condition of San Luis Obispo Creek and how much debris that we removed from those areas. And we were there of service for private property concerns related to bank destabilizations. We ultimately coordinated with the Red Cross to open up a shelter, and we've coordinated with FEMA with our local assistance center. We also did a fair amount of work to make sure those in need also had support related to our homeless response. And we also were there to provide assistance for those with disabilities and access and functional needs. And we provided a significant amount of targeted communications and helping businesses specifically and remind them to deploy and how to use their floodgates. So a tremendous amount of work that ultimately happened. So as we go to the next slide, this is just a chart of ultimately the steps ahead. And I mentioned the good news that we did receive was that the March storm event was added to eligible cost recovery. Our long-term forecast that's going to be going to the City Council next Tuesday assumes $9 million of our reserves being used to pay for roughly about $11.75 million worth of damage. So who pays for all this damage and emergency response? I mentioned that reimbursement rate. And so will ultimately the city be on the hook for about 6.25% of the storm-related costs. If we don't get full reimbursement, then ultimately we'll make adjustments in our capital improvement program into the future years. And what this process really shows you is really the timeline and the process that we'll be receiving, hope to receive reimbursement from both the federal and state government. There is a silver lining, though, to all this rain, is that the good news is that our reservoirs filled up. All of 3 of them are at 100% or near 100% capacity. And so this is a picture of Whale Rock, which reached 100% capacity. It provides the city's water needs for about 3 years just by itself. At the beginning of 2023, Whale Rock was at 72.1%. By the end of the March storms, it was at 100% capacity, and water flowed over the spillway for the first time in 18 years. With the ensuing drought years, seeing water flow down the spillway has become a rare sight, and I'm very thankful for this and our water security into the future. Speaking of safety for our community, many of you know about our roadways and the significant changes and investments that our city is making to make getting around San Luis Obispo by car, bike, or pedestrian safer. And that couldn't happen without the talented transportation team. They work to enhance traffic safety, providing for a safe, reliable and well-maintained roadways, sidewalks, and traffic signals and street lights. One death is too many in our city, and so we need to take every single step we can to make sure that everyone has the opportunity and deserves safe streets in which to walk, bike, access, transit, and drive. So we're working towards a goal. It's called Vision Zero. Hopefully you'll see more about that, and as we try to raise awareness to really get traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries to zero. And this team that you see here is going to be instrumental to making that happen. But it's not just this team. We need everyone's support, our public safety partners in the back, the community's help, and we're committed to providing transportation system that's safe, accessible for all ages and abilities, and we need everyone's cooperation to make that happen. So with that, I'm going to roll, I think, is there a video here? A little video to talk about some of the improvements that we're making and how you can get around. Thanks, Whitney, for rolling that. Next, I'm going to move on to the city's role in homelessness. And like many communities across the state and the nation, San Luis Obispo is no different. We're grappling with how to address homelessness. And this takes a team to ultimately partner with the county and many nonprofits who work every single day to prevent and reduce homelessness. The team focuses on providing compassionate assistance and also reinforcing order to those who in need and want it, while also mitigating issues before they become larger safety or health hazards. And so I want to take a moment to really highlight some of the successes. And so the city has invested over $27 million in this fiscal year in addressing housing and homelessness. The two are inextricably linked. We cannot do it alone. Together with community partners, we have enhanced the city's homeless team coordination with various key staff members and departments to help guide our actions. We improved environmental protection and water quality with cleanup of creeks and open spaces and public spaces and parks. We've initiated and participated in regional collaboration effort to seek out grant opportunities. We have one current grant application pending with the state in partnership with the county. We hope to submit another soon. Our community action team was expanded, and in 2022, the CAT team engaged with 523 individuals. 139 of them received mental health and substance abuse services, and we've helped others provide alternatives to incarceration that include service placement and transitional housing. I mentioned our mobile crisis unit just a minute ago, and they have been instrumental and then leading the way with this pilot program. We've had 478 contacts with individuals experiencing homelessness. We've reunified 19 homeless people with their families, and we've provided 38 transports. We fielded a total of 128 health crisis intervention calls for service, and we continue to expand the funding for nonprofit social service providers. And just, I think, was it a couple weeks ago, we provided funding to $150,000 to some of our partners. And so you see here some of our safe parking program participants that were housed in San Luis Obispo, and he wanted to say thank you for your help on behalf of everyone on the street. And thank you for all the work that you do. Everyone deserves a place to stay, and hopefully homelessness can be solved. Shifting from homelessness to the other key component is housing. And our housing team in community development has been instrumental in helping our community address a pent-up demand for housing. We are, in fact, right now exceeding and leading the way in the county and meeting our regional housing needs allocation in terms of housing production. So they and the colleagues help ensure San Luis Obispo continues to be a safe and attractive and enjoyable place to work and visit. They really plan the city's form and character. They support the values. They preserve the environment. They promote the wise use of resources. And ultimately, but how do we protect our community's character while allowing and encouraging our community to grow? It's really a delicate balance. The next slide really is a visual representation of the continuum of housing. And our housing team has been working with the community to expand units in each of these areas. While the city does not build housing, we can influence, incentivize, facilitate, and fund the expansion of housing for all. And so we've been working with CAPSLO to provide emergency homeless shelter, with Transitions Mental Health in 5 cities to provide transitional housing and permanent supportive housing in SLO. We're working with the county to provide transitional and permanent supporting housing options to reduce the size, location of encampments. And we're facilitating much more housing throughout the city. Ultimately, the city cannot legally construct affordable housing, but we do provide incentives. And so I would all encourage you to keep an eye out in a couple of weeks. On June 20th, the City Council will be one of the first cities in the Central Coast to be bringing forward an item to be designated as a pro-housing jurisdiction. And that will enable us to be eligible for funding and really speaks to the council's and the city's commitment to housing production. In terms of housing production, we all know the story about the lack of affordable and workforce housing. It continues to be almost a conversation everywhere that I go. Every employer, nonprofit, schools, you name it, affordable housing is at the top of the list. And so in 22-23, the city prioritized programs that support new housing production, and we towards our build-out population of 57,200. Just by way of background today, we have about 48,000 residents as of January 1st, and our housing supply is growing. Many of you probably saw the Tribune article from a few weeks back. I think we were one of the only cities that actually saw population growth in the last year. In 2022, there's about 23,000 units in San Luis Obispo. This includes 495 new units. And the question and concern we often get is there enough water to support the growth? And the short answer is yes. So we have a very diverse water supply between Whale Rock, Salinas, and Nacimiento, and that doesn't count ultimately the groundwater resources that we're currently cleaning up today. So how is this all happening? It's happening largely in some of our growth areas, and so in our expansion areas. In Margarita area, we have a significant amount of homes that are moving forward, 442. In the Orcutt area, we have 961 homes completed as of 2022, planning for upwards of 979 homes. In the airport area, closing 300 homes, and then in San Luis Ranch, nearly 650 homes, and then in Froome Ranch area, just off near the Costco Home Depot area, there's plans for additional 174 homes, and then off of Buckley Road, 720 homes. So a significant amount of planning that's taken place over the last 20 plus years. This just not happened overnight, but it's happened through decades of planning. I'm also really proud of some of the other work that we have taken, and this is really, I want to thank Mayor Stewart and Councilmember Shoresman for really being a leader in helping both staff and the community have the courage. We hired during the last year our first ever DEI manager to help with the city's goal to create an organization and a community that's safe and welcoming for all. And this is on the heels of back in 2020, where the city council took action to affirm racism as a public health crisis. And we committed San Luis Obispo to being a welcoming, inclusive, and safe community for everyone. And so the city's core values of diversity and inclusivity and equity are part of our major city goals, a part of our vision, and DEI considerations are part of our long-term financial planning. And so I'm proud of this team who works to make much of this ultimately happen. So we move to the next slide, and I won't go through this in great detail, but our journey began in 2020 when we selected and formed a temporary advisory task force. Ultimately, that moved forward with some DEI high impact grants and small business grants. That then ultimately became a foundation for our major city goal, which will be going to the council next Tuesday night on June 6th. And you can see down below on the bottom part of the timeline, really all the steps that the city has taken. And this cannot, again, happen by ourselves. It's been a partnership with Cal Poly, with Downtown SLO, SLOMA, many of our nonprofit partners that really have leveraged our ability to have an impact and really have strengthened our resolve for making sure that San Luis Obispo is a welcoming place for everyone. We're also working on our sustainability team, and our green team is a cross-departmental team that is convened to help guide the city's approach to being sustainable. And so you're going to be seeing more around the city of San Luis Obispo, a lot of the recognition and branding that we're doing, everything from our electric vehicles, our hybrid vehicles, our charging stations for EV, our water filling stations, our commitment to solar, our participation in governance on community choice energy. There are many things that the city of San Luis Obispo is doing to achieve some very ambitious goals of being carbon neutral in terms of city operations by 2030 and being a carbon neutral community by 2035. And so this talented team is really the team that's making it happen. It includes everyone from public works, our sustainability team, to planning, to members from our DEI. It is really a cross-section of people who are committed to our goal of achieving climate neutrality. So some of the highlights that we have, we've made substantial progress in our 2020 Climate Action Plan, which was recognized by the American Planning Association as the best climate action plan in the United States. And so here's just a brief summary of some of the areas which we have made some progress. We've really created a link, a nexus between diversity, equity, inclusion. We have moved into leadership roles with 3CE. We had a framework for providing and requiring all electric new buildings, which we've put on pause, but we still see a commitment from the building community in San Luis Obispo in line with our values. We've worked on natural solutions for carbon sequestration, and then we've led by example through carbon neutral municipal operations, whether it's our Tesla battery wall at our water treatment plant, to our methane capture at our water resource recovery facility. We are very, very, very active. Also, as I mentioned before, our active transportation. We're trying to find new ways for people to get around San Luis Obispo. And last but not least, we are one of the pioneers in investing in the digester for organic waste reduction and recycling. So lots of things happening in San Luis Obispo that ultimately get us to our goal. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about our community safety teams. And so first, I'm going to talk about the fire department programs and services. And just as a reminder, these teams make up 45% of the general fund budget. In 2022, the SLO Fire Department responded to 7,162 incidents. That was an increase of about 15% since 2021. This emergency response was accomplished with daily minimum staffing of 14 sworn personnel. This is a full all-hazard department, so we do everything from fire and life safety inspections to fire safety plan review, managing wildland fuels, investigating fires and arson, educating the public on fire safety and fire prevention, and then managing emergencies throughout the city. And so I was very thankful for the fire department this last year, having our emergency manager, the first one we'd ever had, that we created a position back in 21 and 23, and it proved to be instrumental when we had the series of storms. Moving to the police department, there's a strong commitment to service and integrity in San Luis Obispo. Our city's population is expected to grow by approximately 15,000 individuals. And so if the same level of ratio is applied, the city will need roughly 13 more police officers by 2035. In 2022, the department employed 60 sworn positions, 31 non-sworn positions for a total of 91 full-time employees. And so this department provides everything from patrol services to crime and investigations to something that's very unique in terms of cities is to our community support and outreach, which includes our student neighborhood assistance program that partners with Cal Poly to address some of the interactions and relationships with the student community. And then last year, and I want to just emphasize this, is that we launched our Spider Tech for customer care. And so what this does is keeps callers apprised of the status of their report, and it also provides the ability for us to gather feedback about our services. And so since we launched this program in November of 2022, we've had an average of about 4,000 surveys per month with a response rate of 20%. And our community overall ranks our police services very satisfied with the services that we are receiving. And so for transparency's sake, we are developing a public dashboard with those statistics, and we'll ultimately provide that information on the city's website. And so with that, and some of the operational highlights, I'm going to turn it back to Mayor Stewart, and she's going to cover the progress moving forward for our city.
Don't worry, my mixed part is short, so we'll get to move on to Q&A at that point. Well, as you heard, a lot of progress this last year, but really the last couple of years, we look at the plan, there's been so much done. When we think about the direction we're going, what does that look like? How do we plan that? Well, plans. This last couple of years has been a lot of time and work invested in planning. And that matters so much because we, as I said earlier, we listen to the community and say, okay, this is where we're going. But without having a plan, we can't actually say, where's the next step? Where's the next step? Where's the next step? So I'm really looking forward to, as we continue actually putting these plans into action. So just to highlight a few, we have up here on the screen, we have the Climate Action Plan, the Climate Adaptation and Safety element of the general plan. We have the Access and Parking Management Plan, the Homelessness Response Strategic Plan, Downtown Flexible Density, and the Community Forest Plan, also previously known as the Urban Forest Plan. And I mention these plans because, wow, there's so much to do, and there's so much that's been kind of wrapping up in this last year. So with the Climate Action Plan, as Derek mentioned, we're just really proud of all the work from the community, the city staff, and the council on leading the Climate Action Plan, the changes. So we were actually, recognized as a national award. And this award was Exemplary Leadership and Inspiration in Sustainability Planning and Implementation. Pretty awesome. One of the other things is, as you probably have heard, there's a lot of money coming out around sustainability and green work, and what does that look like? Well, all of the work we've done in this Climate Action Plan is to help us leverage our funding to get more funding, to be able to do more. And really, the do more with less is not just trying to put more, less people to do all of this extra work. It's really to get that funding so we can truly do it all or do more. And so then this January, the climate adaptation and safety element of the general plan was really looking at how do we make SLO more resilient and get through a lot of the risks and impacts we have. Obviously, we're still going to have fires, we're still going to have floods. Climate change is real, and we have a lot more emergencies, unfortunately, in the next couple of years and on. But to do that, our preparedness is going to make our community safer, and that's what we're really proud of. Also in February, we approved and adopted the updated access parking and management plan. Why does that matter? Well, we have 35 different ways to try to look at how do we improve parking and how do we help our community. One of the things we heard loud and clear was do not get rid of that 1 hour free, please. Well, if you've seen any social media today, we kicked off, as Derek mentioned, the local pilot program around parking across the Palm Theater. And if that goes smoothly, the hope is that the council will then approve this plan for all of the parking facilities. And that really has to do with the technology. This one garage has the technology for us to look at local license plates and identify, yes, you live in SLO County, we're gonna make sure you get that hour free. Also, the homelessness response plan. I mean, this is really our first ever homelessness strategic plan. There was one many years ago when I worked in a different place that said the county was going to reduce homelessness, eliminate homelessness in 10 years. Well, obviously that didn't happen, and here we are. So I just want to give you the vision of what is in the strategic plan for homelessness reduction and prevention. All community members in SLO City are empowered to successfully prevent and address concerns related to homelessness through equitable access to a variety of resources. Periods of unsheltered homelessness within SLO City are reduced due to the regional capacity of conduct, timely outreach and connect individuals and families to a range of housing options. That's quite a bit, and it's pretty dreamy, but there's a lot of plans underneath, a lot of actions underneath that. And if you want to learn more, you can go to slocity.org/homelessness. In March, we had a busy month. We had the homelessness response strategic plan. We also had the downtown flexible density program. A lot of people have shared their feelings around the downtown flexible density. And I look at it pretty simply. We either go up or we go out. And that's very simplified, obviously, but we all love our open space. We love our green belt, and we want to keep it that way. In fact, at the tourism meeting we were just at earlier from Visit SLO Cal for the county, the climate was the number 2 reason people come here to visit, and the number 2 reason that people that live here love being here. So obviously, when we talk about how do we get more housing in this community, it's going to have to be looking for infill within our community that we already have. And also when we look at building, how can we give developers a variety of incentives on building smaller units, looking at maybe that's reduced parking requirements, maybe that's looking at a different way of our inclusionary housing requirement with the smaller units. So just really looking at how can we make this work all together. And also just want to mention, it's not a new idea. We did memorialize this in the 2020 update of the housing element of the city's housing plan. So our city's general plan. So often people are like, where did this come from? It's not new, I promise. So I just want to make sure I highlight that. And then in April, the community forest plan, I'd say the 2 things that are the most important about that is, of course, the planting 10,000 new trees and just identifying that this is mainly covering the trees that are in the public right-of-way, the parks, the city facilities, the city's open space, and riparian areas. So just wanted to highlight, we're not coming to your neighborhood and changing out your trees in your yard. So it's really, really important to hear that. Next are the plans that are under development. So we've invested a lot of time and money in plans that we're ready to run now, and there's still more to go. 3 years ago, we had the murder of George Floyd, and just a couple days ago, I had on my social media, remember this, when we were sitting at Mitchell Park and remembering this horrible act that was happening at that moment. or it just happened. So really, when I think about that, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Task Force had come out of that time and spent a lot of time and said, what do we need to do? Obviously, the manager we hired, the DEI manager, and also the DEI strategic plan. So this year, we will be hopefully, or these next 2 years, we will be hopefully finalizing that plan and really looking at how do we create those steps, that blueprint to making this community more welcoming, more inclusive, and really tackling the systemic inequalities within our community. And based on the feedback that we just gave on Tuesday, about a week and a half ago, really looking at how do we engage the public through our public engagement manual in a more equitable way and more inclusive way. So I'm looking forward to us adopting this hopefully in the beginning of next year. And if you want to know more, get e-notifications, slowcity.org/subscribe. There's so much information on there. Whatever you're interested in, you just check all the boxes or one box, whatever it looks like for you. Also, the Economic Development Strategic Plan. We're looking at economic recovery, economic resiliency. How do we help our community, whether it's your business, whether it's a future business, whether it's expansion. And that's really obviously greatly important to us. And so when we look at our major city goals, this is continuing to be very important to us. Some of the things that we look at, though, too, as we talk about economic development, is now having this lens of equity that wasn't always a part of that. And I think that's something that it's just a little bit of a twist. And then I think also, excuse me, making sure that the city staff are working closely with the Office of DEI. And the other part of this that's really great is the public partnerships that we'll be having with public-private and public-public. There's lots of new news that you'll be seeing in the next few months of really great opportunities that I'm excited to hopefully see us announce very soon, but we can't quite do that yet. So the other thing that has been near and dear to all of our hearts, but I will really truly say that Councilmember Shoresman has really championed the broadband. And when we had that extra money for ARPA, there was a little bit of money we were able to put towards a broadband study. And seeing that access to high-speed internet really affected our students and not being able to study as much. We want to see our K through 12 and our college students succeeding. We want to see our residents and our businesses being more productive. So looking forward to seeing this broadband plan being brought back to us on June 20th. And on top of that, just reminding people that we don't actually sell broadband. We won't be the next Verizon, but we will be creating the network, the infrastructure to be able to help the providers be able to be competitive and hopefully provide a little bit lower cost than we will see when we have only one option. So I think I'm really excited about that. And then the SLOW PD 5-year strategic plan that City Manager mentioned, I think it's important when we talk about, well, what does police reform mean? And I think in these last couple of years, there's been a lot of speculation, a lot of questions, and I think the strategic plan really gives us that opportunity to really identify what's been going well. What is the current state of our police department? What is the future that we want to all come to? And that's going to be all of us coming together and talking with the police department, as well as the police department, be able to give their input as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like for the next 5 years and us coming together. So lastly, I just really excited about what we can be doing with these next few plans. City Manager mentioned, the 100 new spots. Well, for childcare, we're looking at more. We want to figure out how do we get there, because there's still a lot more need for childcare. There's still need for improving our partnerships with Parks and Rec, with Cal Poly, with the SLO Coastal School District, and I also hope a few more nonprofits, but we'll see what that looks like. Also looking at how do we reduce vacancy in downtown and preserving our historic resources and city-owned adobes. That has been something that's been kind of on our list that keeps getting lower and lower and lower in priority. And there's a point, if we don't preserve, we can't move them forward. And I'm also looking forward to, similar to the SLOMA partnership we have here today and others, supporting the arts and culture through grants and improving that in our community. And when we talk about increasing housing and reducing homelessness, we are also talking about preventing. So how do we help renters stay protected? And how do we leverage funds to get more homes here in a less cost? And then lastly, I would say, how do we help with emergency and transitional housing? As you know, as you may know, we have 6 psychiatric beds in our county, and we are still looking at more and more transitional housing being built. So how do we help people stay out of housing and also, stay out of homelessness, and how do we help build more housing in the future? So we have a lot of really great opportunities to grow and come together. And now, Greg, would you like to open up to questions?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to invite both the mayor and city manager Johnson to come back up here. This is the Q&A portion of the evening. I'm going mobile. I will come to you if you'd like to raise your hand. You have a question for either Derek or Mayor Stewart. We'd be happy to entertain that. Yes? Okay, question.
Thanks for telling us the state of the city. I'm very proud of this city. I've lived here 34 years. I'm a little concerned about where the money's going to come from to pay for all of these plans. You mentioned about 30 plans today. Could you tell us in a nutshell what our liabilities are in terms of our unfunded pension liabilities, number one? Number two, the current amount of bond indebtedness we have with the existing bond holders. Number three, what's proposed currently in the way of like the new parking structure, the new police station upgrade. And lastly, what is on the horizon for additional bond or indebtedness in the future?
So first, I'll start with the bonds. We have very low indebted amount. We're far below both state requirements and our local requirements. And the good news is the city ended, as I mentioned at the outset, with a statement of net position where our assets far exceeded our liabilities. And so we have the ability to service our existing debt and ultimately take on additional debt. We have contemplated, and so ultimately the City Council on July 18th will be considering whether or not to issue bonds for our next parking structure, the parking structure on the corner of Napomo and Monterey. That is about a $52 million parking structure. We're able to pay a portion of that in cash, and so depending on how the bid documents come in and what the contractors say it's going to cost, we'll be going to the council on July 18th. The city has made substantial progress on our funded status of our pension liability, and we've made over $12 million in additional discretionary payments. And so recently the City Council hired a third-party actuary to come in and assess ultimately the city's position relative to its funded status. The good news is we were making progress on our unfunded pension liability, though we did have a setback because in 21, CalPERS suffered about a negative 7.5% loss. And so that loss ultimately will be amortized over the next few years. But ultimately, our forecast shows that we're able to sustain and pay for not only our obligated costs for unfunded pension liabilities, but also we forecasted additional discretionary payments. So the council has been committed, and you'll see in their forecast, to pay an additional $2 million a year towards that unfunded pension liability. And roughly for every $1 million that we make in additional payments, we avoid roughly $1 million worth of interest over the term of paying off that unfunded pension liability. Our unfunded pension liability is still over about $150 million. And again, it is something that ultimately the city's budget and forecast is showing that we can support over into the long term. I think the last question that you asked, Mr. Barish, was in terms of how are we going to pay for these plans? And so the City Council has taken a long-term approach to how we're funding really the infrastructure infrastructure and the planned growth of San Luis Obispo. And so we have what is called a development impact fee program. That program was adopted back in 2018, and the council will be looking at an update of those fees in 2023 as part of a comprehensive fee update program. And so we'll be doing two things. One, updating the costs ultimately for what we believe those projects are going to be required in order to be built. And then ultimately we'll be looking at the financing. I think you had one other question is that I think around the Public Safety Center. The council just recently in May decided to look at an approach. We are scheduled to close escrow towards the middle of July on some property directly across the street from the current police station. That facility, once we acquire it, is about 10,000 square feet, will really help us defray and reduce the amount of cost to replace the current police station and then build a public safety center with an emergency operations center. And so we'll be working on the planning documents for that project for the next couple of years. So I think those were the bulk of your questions. And so we move. Yeah, please.
Don't fall. And I think also just to kind of think about on June 6th, we'll be having the budget come to us. It is available right now online if you want to check it out. This council and many councils before us, we also looked at the fiscal health responsibility plan. We created a plan to make sure that we are paying attention to our finances. We are by our own policies required to create a balanced budget. And we also not just pay ahead of time for the unfunded liability, what we also call the additional payment at some time. But also we've set aside a trust so that if we were to have a hard year and not have the funding, we would also have additional money set aside there. So we're really trying to make sure we are planning and saving, and of course we have reserves on top of all of that. The other thing I want to mention is we talked earlier about the taxes for the tourists that come into our community. We kind of, each tourist comes in, about a household gets about $1,700 or saves not having to pay that much. On top of that, the majority of our taxes, our sales tax, is paid by tourists. So it's about 70%. So we are very thankful for all the tourists that come into our community. They let us do so much more and have so many more services than the size of our city.
I would just lastly invite, I think I mentioned as part of the presentation, the outside raters, both Fitch and Moody's, they come in and do their review of the city's finances, and they both affirmed, and in some cases upgraded our bond ratings. And I just paraphrase, they lauded the city for our commitment to overall comprehensive policies, in-depth and sophisticated budgeting and controls for financial management, and all those pay dividends to make sure ultimately that the city remains fiscally solvent, can make sure it can provide the service to the city, and then position ourselves then to fund the infrastructure into the future.
Great. Thank you for that question, and also thank you for the answer.
Thank you. Courtney Kino, resident of SLO. And I wanted to thank you both for all of you for this conversation tonight and the ability to have this interaction with you. And I'd imagine you get this question a lot as you're talking to other cities in the state and in the nation, but I also work at Cal Poly, and we have challenges with getting that engagement, and you have really, really impressive engagement. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what you would attribute that to, and how many of us might be able to learn from that.
Well, I'll have to say that when I went to the League of California Cities for the first time 5 years ago, I went to the League of California Cities conference, and all of us are newbies. And I started sharing what we do. We've done this, every 2 years. We do this. I know we don't want to call it a dotocracy anymore, but we do this, dots and our favorite things, our most priority, what's important. And people just like their eyes just got so wide. I'm like, you do that? We just tell our community what we're doing. We don't even ask them. And I think that is something that our community has asked of the city staff and city council, and that those who are involved and want to work at the city and want to be part of the city council, we value the engagement a great deal. A few years ago, or so 2 years ago, when we had our director of communications join us. That was something that really improved our communication out to the community. And I think the feedback in with Greg and many other staff have been working on the open town hall. I mean, I think just having all these different opportunities to be able to give us feedback really opened up the chance to have that conversation, because before it's like you had to come here, give us your 3 minutes, and that's it. And also we've added now hybrid meetings going forward starting July. So I'm excited to have another opportunity for people to be able to communicate with us and give us their opinion. So we are running the city hopefully in the way that our community wants it to be run.
I would just echo the mayor's comments. You know, we've opened up so many different avenues for the community to engage, and I would say that the staff who works at the city are all there along the way, so they can see a lot of the community feedback and see the passion that ultimately the residents of San Luis Obispo have for the quality of life in our city. And so they understand that there's that link, and that their engagement and their contributions have the ability to make an impact. You know, one of the key pieces of technology that we rolled out this last year was Ask SLO. And it's a new tool. I encourage everyone to download the app. It provides you the real-time ability to then provide service requests or information requests. I think it's been out for about 6 months now. I think we're close to about 2,500 inquiries that have come through. So if you have a pothole that you want repaired, or you see graffiti, or a tree that needs to be maintained, or you have a question, it's a really quick way to get information into the city, and then for it to be tracked. And at the very end, you get an opportunity to give us a survey yet again and give us the feedback about how we're serving San Luis Obispo. And, you know, and all of this is really about building trust with the community. You know, we can do great things when there's trust from the citizens of San Luis Obispo. And so all of this is really aligned from the budget process all the way through the execution to make sure we have those feedback loops that build that trust.
Great. Thank you. Other questions folks have?
And of course, our 17 advisory bodies.
Just kind of general comments. I'm Leslie Halls. I've been a resident here since 1979. I see all the building going around. Frankly, I think it's horrible. I live on Ocean Air Drive, just off of Little Manhattan on Madonna. I went over there and toured some of the homes. You can actually look through the window to the other unit and see whatever's going on over there. These are homes that start at $850,000, which is hardly workforce housing or affordable housing. Well, all we're building is more stuff for people to come and move here who have jobs or want to retire here. We're not taking care of the local workforce. I don't know why you can't build mobile homes. I don't know why you can't build smaller homes on larger lots where they could add on. But I know the city makes a lot of money off this development, and you have these state rules and regulations, but I feel like the current way that this is going is just destroying the character of the community, and I think it's terrible. As somebody who has lived here probably longer than you've been alive, I find it absolutely disgusting to go with this high-rise attitude. I think it's horrible. I'm tired of seeing homeless people downtown. Everybody I know says I don't go downtown anymore because of the homeless. And if you go downtown, you'll see these long-term rentals that have been vacant forever. You know, I don't know what the vacancy rate was. I heard last it was 12% in the city. That is not good. And I don't know what the city can do, but apparently they're not doing too much. And just for the folks at home, there are 15 people here who are not city employees. So we don't have a real good turnout tonight for this.
Thanks for your question. We're also streaming this on YouTube. We'll post online there to answer the question on the downtown vacancy rate. It's currently 8%.
Thank you. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it's 8%, but we have the executive director of the Downtown Association here. And of course, I know that city manager has those details and statistics as well. You know, and I'll let the city manager give all the official details, but I will say that I hear you. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to see so much change in a community when you've been used to what it has been for a long time. And there's an aspect that we have a lot of people who need housing, and not just are people in this community asking for that housing, the state is also requiring the housing. So there's a combination of what is required. We have what's called the regional housing numbers allocation, and we are actually one of the cities that are doing well in getting the housing built. And we have, I believe it's about, and I'll let the city manager correct my details, but I believe we have about 600 affordable units either in some process of either permitting or being built or will be built in the next couple of years. And I think that's really important, is that we do care about low income and we do care about affordable housing. And those are the ways we're trying to continue to come up with creative ways to help people live here with a lower cost, whether it is a smaller unit or whether it is accessing some public-private funding, and then of course using that funding that we do have to leverage additional funding. So there are a lot of ways we're looking at housing and trying to be creative. As far as also just kind of highlighting, I've heard the mobile home question quite a few times from people, and I so appreciate that, because mobile homes are smaller, they're less expensive, and I see that. And with that same amount of land, someone finds that they can build more housing on that same amount of land than building the amount of mobile homes they could build. So since mostly what we have left is private land, we don't have the ability to tell a private owner what to do with their private property. So it's really up to the community and trying to create incentives and different zoning and trying to work with different partners to be able to build more housing and build less housing prices. As far as people looking in your window, that is unfortunate, but I live in a condo, and unfortunately that's just the way it works sometimes when you have to live in or want to live in a little bit lower priced homes. It's not as out on an acre by yourself, so there is that too. City Manager?
So I appreciate the comment. I think we're going through unprecedented levels of change in this world. I think that we're experiencing that right now. I think COVID accelerated that. We saw a change in people's consumption habits. And so what we're seeing downtown, as Mr. Herman pointed out, we have one of the lowest vacancies in downtown in the Central Coast. There's some big retail spaces. And so there's a real question about whether or not that typology, roughly 20,000 square feet in the downtown, is really going to be tenanted in the 21st century. And so we have reached out to those property owners earnestly several times to try to spur some thought and some redevelopment. And we're hoping that ultimately our repeated efforts to try to see if there'd be creative opportunities to redevelop those properties will yield some redevelopment. We know one of the key things for a vibrant downtown is people. And the best way to get people downtown is to have them live there. And so in the future, you're probably going to see more people living downtown in the future. We think that that's a key for vibrant downtowns into the future of San Luis Obispo. So appreciate the question, understand the concern. I spent most of my career in Santa Barbara County. I will tell you that it is going through a lot of transition right now. And I would say our city has got a leg up. We have plan change. And because of our plan change, ultimately we're responding to the situation as it unfolds over time.
Great, thank you. We've got a couple minutes left. If there's any final questions from folks, thank you.
Thanks. I'm Catherine Nelson. We are relatively new residents of SLO, so this has been a great overview of everything going on in the city. Especially excited about what the city's doing to move towards carbon neutrality, and just wondering what your thoughts are and what, as private citizens, are the most important things we could do to contribute to that, to the city's plan.
Wow, there's so much that we are all working on and that we all can do. And at the same time, we are really being aggressive as far as the kind of work we're looking at. And I think that, one of the things, for example, the new buildings to be all electric, that was obviously stepped back a little bit from the city, but it's still something that can be done. So as the city, we are still focused on the new buildings to be all electric for us as the municipality, which for us, we're looking at how can we do everything as much as possible to be leaders in this realm of climate change. We'd like to be carbon neutral by 2030 so that we can show the community how to do it. And I would say that we need champions. We need champions to be able to make change in this community, and we also need champions to be able to tell each other what to do and where to find the details, where to find the procedures to change things in your house, or when you're looking at getting a new house. We'll welcome, you're new, so you're probably not looking for a new house, but when others are, what are those changes you can do? And we have all volume 1, 2, and 3 of our climate action plan on our website, so you can definitely take a look and look at the things that fit into your personal life. I know some people changing their method of transportation into bus or walking or biking. We're doing so much change in, you saw the slow motion, so much change on how to make it easier to walk or to bike or to stroll or to roll all around our city. So those are just a couple things, and I'll let City Manager add in.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple areas that I would suggest is likely you're enrolled and receive your energy from Community Choice Energy. And so hopefully you've investigated some of their programs. And those programs provide funding for whether you are looking for an EV charger at your home, if you're looking for a rebate for electric vehicle. There are new programs for retrofit of some of your appliances to make them all electric. And you can always reach out to our team to investigate a whole host of appliance changes in your house, weatherization. There's a variety of ways that we can ultimately provide feedback to property owners or renters about ways we can improve the efficiency of your built home. So thanks for that question.
Hi, I'm Michelle Shoresman, one of the council members, and I just had to put a little plug in also for one of our community partners, the SLO Climate Coalition, who is a group of very knowledgeable local residents who are kind of struggling through how they can make the most impact themselves in their homes and make a bigger impact on their neighbors and fellow community members to help each other go green. There's also a website called Resilient SLO that is a way that you can put in all of your energy use and the different aspects of your home and tell you how much you're utilizing, how much you might be able to save more energy in your own home and make improvements as you're able to. So I just wanted to give a plug to our partner, the Climate Coalition and Resilient SLO as well.
Awesome, thank you. And also, as we mentioned earlier, you can do the e-notifications to get more information when we have new programs, new rebates, things that come along. Thank you for the question.
Great, thanks. And I think this will be our last question tonight.
Hi, I'm Denise Sinvik. We've lived here since 1993. And thank you for the opportunity to share with you and listen. I wanted to talk about parking quickly. First of all, I've never believed that downtown parking has been that much of a drudgery. I love parking in the parking structures, walking to where I want to go, or parking on a little bit outside of the downtown core and then walking. So that's been fine. I have a question and also I'm super happy to hear about the first hour free local innovation solution. I think that's great. So I love my little hour free parking if I'm running to the library or something. So that's great. I had a question about the new structure that's being built. I read Councilwoman Andy Pease's article a week or two ago explaining the reasoning behind funding it. And like I said, I love parking structures, so that's fine. But it seemed like in the article, it referenced repeatedly how it was going to meet the needs of the SLO Rep Theater. And that was really going to help, having that parking structure was really going to make it easy for the patrons that are coming to the theater. And while I love having a thriving arts community, it almost felt like this hugely expensive subsidy for the theater. So I don't know, just curious if you could add to that.
Yes, I'll let City Manager share about the actual, financial bond details. I will say, as someone who owned my own business here, 20 years ago, 2003, 2006, one of the things that I was constantly talking about with other businesses is we don't have enough parking on the west end. So at one point, I was on a couple subcommittees for the Downtown Association, and one of the biggest topics was we need more parking over on this end because people park in Choro and Palm. They don't want to walk all the way down to, not Aaron Brothers, but why can I not think of, thank you, the Creamery. They do not want to walk all the way down to the Creamery. That is way too far for parking. So for us to be able to create spots so that all of our businesses can thrive, and we've been talking about this for 30 years, quite honestly, of the downtown businesses, and not just me, but many, many businesses. On top of that, as far as the SLO rep, I think the conversation a lot of time about that was because SLO rep will be on the first floor, but really this is the cultural arts district. I mean, this gives you the access to be closer to the Children's Museum, the SLO Museum of Arts, the, of course, the future SLO rep. And, having this access to all of the arts this close is truly a feel that brings more people to shop and to eat and to visit the downtown before or after their event they're doing as well, or attending as well. So really trying to create that space that not just that we can have art here, but that people can actually kind of find it, but also for all of the businesses downtown. Also, as we continue to grow housing downtown, we're going to need some places at some point to be able to have people visit their friends and family that are living downtown, and where are they going to park at that moment. So this is another aspect for that.
I think that I won't repeat the mayor. She did a great job. I think it's just really important to remember that this is a parking structure that's needed for the entire downtown. We're calling it the cultural arts parking structure, but we know that we're going to need it in the future to meet our entire downtown. And as the mayor indicated, it's really it's going to be co-located with the SLO rep. There's also going to be some housing on the site as well, so some affordable housing. So it is really just a mix. And so, but it's been important for us to talk about really that this facilitates really the SLO rep project we're moving forward, but many more. There are many projects and developers that I've spoken with that are waiting for the parking structure to get built so that they can determine whether or not they want to build their housing project, a hotel project, reinvest in their retail, because they want some assurances that their patrons will have a place to park when they want to come downtown.
Great. And with that, I think we're going to wrap it up for this evening. So I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate that we have an engaged and informed community. If you haven't taken an opportunity to sign up for our e-notifications or follow us on your social media of choice, I encourage you to do so. You can take out your phone and scan that handy QR code. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. And you can make sure to stay up to date with all the different opportunities to stay engaged and informed in the city of San Luis Obispo. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager Johnson. We'll stick around for several minutes after if you have any other questions. If not, we hope you enjoy your evening, and thanks again.